Before it was a neon-soaked slapstick spectacle, The Mask was a dark, ink-splattered horror comic about bloody vengeance. But when director Chuck Russell and a rising star named Jim Carrey teamed up, they threw out the gore and sparked the 90s cultural phenomenon. Picture a comic book page dripping with heavy ink, visceral gore, and a relentless thirst for bloody vengeance. That was the original The Mask, published by Dark Horse Comics in the late 1980s and early 90s. It wasn't a wacky romp about a lovable goofball. It was a brutal, psycho thriller descent into absolute darkness where whoever wore the wooden artifact became an unstoppable, unhinged slasher. When New Line Cinema picked up the rights, the initial plan was to carve out a gritty new horror franchise. But director Chuck Russell, veteran of A Nightmare on Elm Street and The Blob, took one look at the source material's excessive violence and realized it simply wouldn't translate to mass mainstream success. Instead, Russell made a franchise-defining gamble. Strip away the graphic carnage, pivot hard into slapstick absurdity, and inject the manic, boundary pushing energy of a rising Canadian stand up named Jim Carrey. What emerged from that pivot wasn't a cheap horror flick, but a neon soaked 90s pop culture masterpiece that blended classical Tex Avery cartoon physics with live action cinema. Behind the zoot suits and spinning tornado exits lay a groundbreaking visual effects landmark. Produced on a mid-range budget of roughly $18 to $23 million, The Mask poured a massive chunk of change, about $7 million, straight into its special effects, handled primarily by Industrial Light and Magic alongside other top shops. In 1994, CGI was still a terrifyingly expensive frontier. The Mask didn't just use computers for background polish, it fundamentally relied on digital wizardry to physically alter human anatomy in real time. When Stanley Ipkiss transforms, his eyes pop out of his skull on spring-loaded stems, his jaw drops to the floor, and his heart beats straight through his jacket. This wasn't standard rubber suit prosthetic work. It was a seamless fusion of traditional makeup wizardry by Greg Cannon and pioneering computer animation. The film's technical achievement was so profound that it earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Visual Effects, standing shoulder to shoulder with historical milestone films like Forrest Gump. You cannot talk about The Mask without contextualizing the absolute tidal wave that was 1994. Before that year, Jim Carrey was known as the rubber-faced breakout performer from Fox's sketch series In Living Color. Few believed a supporting sketch comic could carry a feature film. Then 94 happened. Carrey unleashed a triple threat of cinematic destruction that completely rewired Hollywood comedy. It began in February with Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, a surprise blockbuster that made him a household name. Just a few months later, The Mask hit theaters in July, capitalizing on Carrey mania to pull in a staggering $351 million worldwide against its modest budget. It became the second highest grossing superhero movie up to that point, trailing only 1989's Batman, and stood as the most profitable comic book adaptation based on a return on investment ratio until Joker arrived in 2019. As if two massive hits weren't enough, Carrey closed out the year in December with Dumb and Dumber. Overnight, a star who had made a modest $540,000 for The Mask reshaped the economic power structure of Hollywood, proving that unadulterated physical comedy could conquer the global box office. While Carrey was the engine of the movie, The Mask also serves as the ultimate Hollywood fairy tale for its leading lady. When casting began for Tina Carlisle, the sultry, mob-connected lounge singer who catches Stanley Ipkiss's eye, the production needed someone with magnetic, show-stopping presence. They found it in an absolute newcomer, a 21-year-old former model with zero prior acting experience named Cameron Diaz. Stepping onto a major feature film set for the very first time, Diaz possessed an effortless, cinematic star power that immediately commanded the screen. Roger Ebert famously hailed her as a true discovery, and the film instantly catapulted her into international leading lady status, setting the stage for a decades-long career at the top of the A-list. Decades after its theatrical debut, The Mask refuses to age. While many 90s comedies lean heavily on dated pop culture references, The Mask survives because it is essentially a live-action Tex Avery cartoon. It captures lightning in a bottle, an era where practical stunts, early digital effects, and a once-in-a-generation comedic talent collided to create pure, unadulterated cinematic joy. It's colorful, it's fast-paced, it features an unforgettable soundtrack that sparked the 90s swing music revival, and it boasts a fearless lead performance that will never be replicated. Long after the zoot suit is long after the zoot suit is hung up, The Mask remains an undisputed classic, proving that some things truly are timeless. Decades later, The Mask remains an unmatched triumph of live-action cartoon physics, technical innovation, and star-making power. By blending groundbreaking visual effects with a once-in-a-generation comedic engine, it cemented its place as a timeless 90s masterpiece that still slaps just as hard as today.